By now, you've probably heard of the free-to-play open-world action RPG that has skyrocketed in popularity in the last month, Genshin Impact. Now, a lot of people online have been comparing it to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, or even going so far as to call it a straight-up clone, so if you're watching this video right now to get information on this game, then chances are you've played Breath of the Wild and want even more. So the real question you're probably asking right about now, is it actually like Zelda, and can Genshin Impact satisfy that same itch while you wait for Breath of the Wild 2 and Breath of the Wild -100? Now, being a huge Zelda fan myself who has dedicated more time to that franchise than you can shake a Deku stick at, I feel pretty confident when I simply say yes. I think this game does satisfy some of that same itch, but it also brings a bunch of its own original ideas to the table as well. So it's not just a clone. That's definitely an exaggeration to say that. But anyways, I went into it kind of skeptical, just trying to try it out and see how I felt and everything, and now I'm addicted, and I've spent a good 40 plus hours into this game. So, in this video, I'm going to give you an honest Zelda-flavored review now that I have all that experience under my belt. So first of all, this game is made by a Chinese company that prides itself on being otaku, or to put that in Americanese, they're just a bunch of comic book nerds, and all of their games are basically made to be playable anime that are designed to tickle that fancy and your wallets. This is a gacha game, meaning that you have to roll for random loot as you cross your fingers hoping that you get the shiny toys and the cute waifus, and as you play through the game, you will accumulate these very resources that you need to roll for that loot anyway. And I myself have been getting a bunch of cool stuff, and I've been playing this entire time without spending any real-world money at all, and I'm having a great time, so it's totally possible to play without costing you anything. Unless you have a gambling problem. Then it will cost you everything. But yeah, that's the business model, is you can spend money to get even more wishes so you can get more cool stuff. But just so you know, you will earn wishes just by playing the game in general. So I haven't spent any money at all, but I've been having a great time just playing the game anyways, and I've already unlocked many things. So, totally possible to have fun without spending any money at all. Also, just so you know, every wish you make makes progress towards your next big loot, because if you roll badly too many times in a row, the game will just give you stuff. So it's like your chances go up over time is a nice way of thinking of it. But you get a guaranteed 4-star every 10 pulls, and you get a guaranteed 5-star every 90 pulls if you haven't pulled one before that. So eventually the game will just give you stuff, so you're guaranteed to get something legendary eventually. But anyways, it makes me feel better because at least I know I'm making progress. You can just wish all day long. If you have the resources, just go ahead and do it in whatever type of category you're wanting to do, and all your progress will be saved. So just so you know, if you're grinding or whatever, if you are doing free to play, you are still making progress, and that makes me feel better anyways. But yeah, the game tries to incentivize you paying money to get more wishes is kind of what they try to do. It is tempting. But yeah, the game just be like, whatever character you want to use, we got it all. We got hot guys, we got cool guys, we got battle maids, we got regular maids, we got wolf wannabes, we got wolf actual bees, we got zombie lollies, and we also have an extra dose of 6th grade syndrome for you. Oh yeah. But yeah, you can totally make whatever kind of team you want. All the characters are viable. It's super awesome. You can use anybody. Except for Amber, she's terrible. Nobody likes her. The voice acting is real good too, by the way. It's like butter just melting and sliding into your eardrum. Now, if you're really looking for a treat, turn on the Japanese voice acting and then try climbing up a wall with Lisa. You're welcome. But seriously, the voice talent here is amazing, so skip ahead to the following timestamp if you don't want to be spoiled. Here is a quick cinematic that is a humorous example of what I'm talking about. It's really good stuff.
For these sins for the rest of my life, it would still not be enough. Oh, give it here. How could this holy liar, but how?
Huh? Let Paimon see!
No. I don't know how you managed to fix it, but you'll never touch the liar again.
We, really should get going. That trick I used to repair the Holy Liar. I mean, the magic I used isn't going to hold forever, you know. What? You tone-deaf, Bart! Hey, don't go!
So as I just established, the quality of the voice acting is really high. Like, they definitely hired some top-notch people. They're an absolute pleasure to listen to. However, the quality of the script sometimes falls short of that. So it's the quality of the writing isn't as good. So while the stuff they're saying is beautiful, what they're actually saying is kind of dumb sometimes. I would say like 80% of the time the script is at least serviceable, if not really good. And it's there's many times where I just burst out laughing at the stuff that was happening. It was very enjoyable. I liked it a lot. However, occasionally it is not that way. It feels like they just got lazy for that section, or maybe it's a translation glitch because it's originally in Chinese. I don't know. But whatever, regardless, there are points when something happens that makes me facepalm. This is particularly noticeable with Paimon, the self-proclaimed, like, best companion ever. She says things that just make me cringe, but just every once in a while. So the internet in general makes fun of her a lot, and that's why. So anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is, for the best gaming experience, Just skip everything that Paimon says, right? I'm just kidding. Anyway, this game is very storyline driven, and so all those quests are fully voice acted. In fact, I'm kind of shocked at the sheer number of quests that have full voice acting, and it's all really high quality. There is also other quests that are not voice acted, and a lot of those are like random encounters that you see out in the wild, or they are commissions that you get every day, etc., and you do those quests and they don't have dialogue at all. However, they are still pretty enjoyable. In fact, some of them seriously made me burst out laughing. Like, for example, on screen, I'm currently showing one quest that I really enjoyed. Just to give you a quick rundown, this bro he's training pigeons, carrier pigeons, and they're being disobedient lately, so he wants you to go give them a good scare. So you like run out into the woods, you run through them, then they fly off, and then you just keep doing it over and over again. Eventually, I just was curious, and so I ended up just shooting at one. I was trying to startle it. I accidentally killed it, but then Paimon scolded me, and I go back to the guy, and he's like, "What have you done? Now you will be my carrier pigeon," and he sends me on a mission to go deliver a letter for him. And it just made me laugh that the game was self-aware enough to do that, I guess. And then, when I came back and he's like grudgingly gives me a reward, but it just made me laugh. It was funny, and I was excited at the thought of the quest forking. Now, the more I look back on it, I think that maybe I would have just chased the pigeons in the forest forever until I killed one, so maybe I did exactly what they were expecting me to do, but the idea of it being potential, the fact of me potentially making more steps for myself, I was like, that's fair, like, I deserved that, I was a jerk, like, there you go, oh well. So I didn't mind that happened, so it made me laugh, and so, like, that kind of thing happens in this game a lot, so if you're actually reading the dialogue and stuff, it is actually pretty enjoyable. So, even though it's not fully voice acted and stuff, even the non-voice acting stuff is pretty cool. Just so you know, too, all these world quests and stuff, the resource you get as reward is that very resource that you use to roll in the gacha system to get new characters and epic loot. Anyway, you get the idea. You go back to town, you talk to characters, and then they give you quests, which is often fully voice acted, and this sends you off into the world, which is what leads into the actual gameplay. So I'd break up the gameplay into two main categories, basically. You have the more intense stuff, which is going to be like the really intense combat and challenges and dungeons and boss battles and stuff like that. And then you have the open world exploration, which is just super, like, chill and calm, and you're just, like, running around having a good time and doesn't require much brain power. So how this works is you're just, like, running around this grassland, and there's a bunch of shiny objects that you want to collect by just button mashing. So you just collect all the things as you're passing through. And then there's a bunch of enemy encounters that you can optionally fight if you want, and that often leads to chests. Now, this is the kind of the portion of the game that is very reminiscent of Zelda and Breath of the Wild specifically, and is what got this game this reputation where people were calling it a Zelda clone. Now, it is heavily inspired by Breath of the Wild, and it borrows from those mechanics, which is actually kind of neat, and I'll talk more about that later. But anyways, you have a stamina gauge, you can climb mountains, you can run through fields, you can sail around, it all looks very familiar. In fact, you can even collect orbs that you can then use to purchase upgrades at goddess statues. They also have Seelies, which are like fairies that you touch, and it reminds me very much of like the flower Koroks from Breath of the Wild, where you follow the breadcrumb trail of flowers and eventually it leads to Korok Sea. This is very similar, just leads to a chest that spews out goodies at you. There's lots of chests out in the overworld, and a lot of them will actually respawn once a week. Pretty much it's just the lower tier ones. A lot of the really high quality chests that are hard to get, those ones, or that require puzzles, are one-time events, but a lot of lower tier ones like burn the vines that are around it or whatever, or like defeat all the enemies in this area, those ones all respawn once a week. Same thing with all the plants that you're collecting too, those respawn once a week as well. Along those same lines, if you really enjoyed using interactive maps for Breath of the Wild and you want some more of that sweet, sweet browser action, then this game's got you covered. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Anyway, there's also some light-duty puzzle mechanics, like you think there's a chest around here somewhere, it turns out there's like a wall that you can break with your sword, and so then you find a chest behind the corner. Or you step on a switch and it starts a timed puzzle, which then leads to a chest. Or you break all these balloons, which then leads to a chest. Or you light all the torches, which leads to a chest. And it's that kind of thing as you're walking around. If something looks suspicious, chances are it leads to a chest. But all these things are pretty easy, and it doesn't really require a lot of brain power. Again, I would say the overall aesthetic of the overworld is the fact that it's very chill. It's the kind of thing you do after a long day of work, and you're like, and you can just like do this thing kind of mindless, like running around collecting stuff, and it feels nice. But just know that this is a big portion of this game, and it does happen a lot at the very beginning of the game, so I don't think that the very beginning, because it's only exploration, doesn't really show you how intense this game can get later on, and I'll be showing that here in a little bit. One other thing to comment on before we move on is the music in this game is really nice, and that's very noticeable when you're exploring out like this. There's like the music, I would say, reminds me of like a National Geographic documentary that showcases a bunch of sweeping vistas and mountain ranges and stuff. The music is all very good, and the aesthetic is very pleasant. My only complaint here is just that I wish that there were more biomes, since there's just grass everywhere. Like, everywhere you go in this game is just grassland, and I wish that I would have liked to have explored like some frozen mountains or a desert or a swamp or something. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a grass hater or anything. I like lawns as much as the next guy, but just give me some variety. So next, let's talk about the intense portion of this game, which is going to be the combat. Now, murder can be accomplished unmatched in many ways in this game, and it is very fast-paced, very intense, and it has a lot of depth to it, which is what makes this game... I think it's the biggest draw of this game is the combat. They have a really unique twist on their elemental system, which is really interesting. At first glance, a lot of RPGs have, like, some kind of rock, paper, scissors mechanic, and that's not really how this game works. That is true that certain elements are really good in specific situations. However, it's a lot more flexible than you might think at first glance. However, there is a lot of depth to it, and I will explain. So, how it works is that each character represents a specific element, and all of the abilities that they have will be of that element. So, what you want to do is you want to figure out your Pokemon team and have them... You have 4 characters at once, and you can swap between them at any time. You can only have 1 character out at a time. So you swap out, and you use their abilities, and you swap back. So you try to use their abilities when they're off cooldown, and then activate it, and then swap out for somebody else. And then meanwhile, that elemental effect is still going, is kind of the idea. So you have somebody throw down a turret that will then shoot enemies, or they use some kind of, like, aura that follows you around and burns enemies nearby or whatever, that kind of thing. And what happens is when an elemental effect comes in contact with your target, so your enemies will get this icon above their head where they're debuffed with that particular element. Now, each element in and of itself does not really do anything all that special, like Cryo will chill them a little bit, you know, Fire will make them, you know, take burn damage over time, like whatever, it's pretty basic stuff. But the cool thing is when multiple elements come in contact with each other. So if one element comes in contact with any other element, then it has a more extreme effect because it explodes violently. So the real basic way to wrap your mind around it is just to understand that combining 2 elements is a good thing, and that's all wonderful and everything. It does a big burst of damage, that's great. That's the simple way to understand it. The more complicated depth comes into play when you realize that each elemental reaction has an extended effect. For example, Frozen, which is just simply Hydro plus Cryo. That makes sense, right? You get them wet, you chill them, and then poof, they become frozen for like 2 seconds. Wonderful. Now, while they're frozen, they take increased damage from physical. So what you want to do is you freeze them, and then instantly you want to switch to your physical damage dealer, whoever you have, who you pumped all your money into, who has the really good weapons, and you start dishing out the physical pain because now they're taking like triple damage from physical, which is great, and that's one layer of depth. But the other thing to realize is if you keep applying the chill damage, you will extend the duration of the frozen status. So if you can get chill damage to keep going while you're still using your physical damage dealer, you can keep them frozen for like 10 seconds or 12 seconds, and you just destroy them. You do so much damage in this burst of this window that you've created. So what you're trying to do is set up these teams where you're taking full advantage of the depth of these things. Again, going back to what I was saying, like the first layer of depth is just, okay, I chilled them. Second layer of depth is, oh, I froze them. And then the third layer of depth is, I switched to a physical and I'm doing extra damage. And the fourth layer of depth is, I'm extending the duration of the frozen status, but I'm still using a physical damage dealer to ramp it up like crazy. So it just gets exponentially more extreme with each layer of planning that you do. So when you can successfully pull out these nasty combos, it is so good. Like, it feels so good. Anyways, so that's an explanation of how it works. Now, the thing to realize, though, is you also face, like, against Cryo enemies, and they're immune to Frozen, so that particular combo just isn't going to work against that enemy type at all. And so you're going to have a real rough time with that. So you need to design your team to be flexible enough to deal with the things that you can't do with your primary combos that you're trying to shoot for. So you just need to make sure you keep that in mind with whatever characters you're trying to bring for any particular situation. Anyway, you get the idea. You have all these different elemental reactions, in particular with the 4 primary elements, which is going to be Pyro, Electro, Cryo, and Hydro. Now, each one of those has an elemental reaction between the other main elements, and that reaction has an extended effect. So it has just flat damage, but it also does something additional. So there's a lot of depth to it. For example, Overload between Pyro and Electro causes enemies to explode, doing fire damage around them. So that area damage isn't very good against fire enemies specifically, so they won't take damage from that because they're immune, but every other type of element, it's totally fine for them, and it's really good. So an example of something you can do with that is a combo is suck them all up with an Animo user, which is Wind. So suck them all up like a black hole, then do area fire damage, and then area electro. And what happens is you apply Overload to all of them at the same time. But because they're all close together, that means all of them are doing area damage to each other. So it's not just the fact that one of them explodes, it's that all of them explode. It's like, it is so much fun. Anyways, you get the idea. There's combos like that you can do that are just really, really powerful. They're a lot of fun. So, but you want to build your team so that you have access to at least 2 elemental reactions, ideally, so that you can counter various situations. Again, Overload isn't good against fire enemies, at least as far as the area damage is concerned, but there's other combos that are good as well. So, depending on how you build your team, you can counter various situations, and that's part of the fun of this game, is like figuring out what those combos can be and also being able to utilize them well and coming up with really good ways to murder things. Anyway, I could rant about this for like 20 minutes, so I'm just gonna move on. You get the idea. Now, in case it wasn't entirely obvious, the exact same elemental reactions can happen to you. So once again, having an elemental effect on yourself, just one of them isn't really a problem, but if a second one happens, then it'll have an elemental reaction, and that combo will just destroy you. So it's always kind of scary when you get an effect on you. You want to run away and wait for it to wear off, and then you can finally go in and again. Otherwise, you will probably just murder yourself very easily. But anyways, you get the idea. So rain is both incredibly terrifying and incredibly exhilarating, because if you can take advantage of it, it's super awesome. All the Lisa mains just get all excited every time it rains because they're just, all their attacks are lightning, so they're just like boom, 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 just everything you do. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, review. That's what I was doing. I just keep going into guide mode. It's what I do. Don't look at me. So maybe I went into guide mode a little too hard there. But at the same time, that's what you're here for. You're trying to ask the question, okay, the combat's interesting. What's cool about it? Tell me. And so I did that. I gave you a taste, and now you know what it's all about. So something else I will say about this game, I'm not really sure how to put this into words. I feel like the best way to describe it is some of the overworld bosses, because they're just all really gorgeous. They're not necessarily all that hard. I feel like they're kind of medium difficulty. Like once you kind of get their attack patterns down, it's not really that big a deal, and you can just avoid everything really well. And so even if they do a lot of damage, it doesn't matter. But I just think they're super engaging and interesting. A lot of them have like these, you DPS them down, you get past their shield, whatever, and then they're stunned, and then they're like on the ground, and then you can just attack them or whatever. But they're all really pretty, and their attack phases are really, all their attacks are super interesting and varied. And even though some of them look the exact same, like you have the cryo vine thing, and then you have the fire one, and then you have like the electric cube, and then you have the stone cube, or whatever, and they're all like similar reskinned versions of the same boss, whatever, basically. But they have completely different attacks. They're totally different, but they're just really pretty, and they're interesting, and they're engaging, and I like them. And I don't mind having to fight them again, because the game kind of forces you to have to come back to get more materials in order to upgrade all your bros. And I actually don't mind that, because I think the reason is, like, I'm comparing it to other games like Dauntless, for example. I got pretty burned out on that game, but I think I'm doing boss after boss after boss in that game, and then meanwhile in this game, everything I'm doing is so varied. I have these chill exploration periods, and then I'm doing crafting, and then I have this really intense, like, Spiral Abyss challenge where I'm fighting elites, and I'm just dying, and they're murdering me, and then I switch to, like, a boss like this where I'm crafting material. I don't know how to explain. Everything, it's just, there's highs and lows, and it's, like, chill, and then it's intense, and it's just constantly going back and forth, and I'm constantly doing different things. They give me a bullet point list of the dailies to do every day, and the things I have to do are varied enough that I think it keeps me interested. Like, I feel like I got more burned out doing dailies in WoW than I did in this game. And, granted, I've only been playing it for a couple weeks, but I'm really enjoying it so far, and I feel like that's one of the benefits of this game. So anyways, going back to what I was saying, bosses. I feel like the bosses are a great example of this, because the bosses aren't necessarily that hard, but I like them. I don't mind having to fight them again, because I just think they're super cool. I don't even really know how to explain. They're beautiful, and they're just really interesting. Like that water boss I was showing earlier, it has all these different summons, and you use different strategies for each summon that it makes, and it's random every time. So even though I'm fighting the same boss, the way it plays out is different every time. And I just think it's super interesting, and I like it. So one of the things that this game does that I really enjoy, it's just a quality of life thing. It's such a little thing, but I feel like I want to highlight it because it really made a big impact on me, and I want to explain it. And it is simply the fact that you can click on materials to get a description. And it's such a small detail, but I like it a lot. So let me explain. You have different upgrades you can do for your character, either upgrading your characters or upgrading your weapons and stuff like that. And you spend resources on it, whatever. But then you get to a certain threshold where you're locked out and you can't go and continue until you ascend them, which means you spend some materials that you got out in the world. So you need to go farm for materials, then you use that to ascend the object or yourself, and then it allows you to get to another 10 levels that you can then upgrade, whatever. So that's how that works. Now, these different materials, you can click on them, and it makes a pop-up appear, and it lists the different ways for you to get that material. So it'll say things like, it drops off of these enemies, or you can craft it, or you can get it off of this particular boss, or it has a chance to, whatever, be in this area of the world, or you get it from this particular dungeon on this particular day. Yes, the dungeon's loot will change throughout the week, and I actually kind of like, they have a schedule, and I actually kind of like that, because that means that dungeons that I wouldn't normally go to actually have something I want, and so it varies it up, and I'm having a different experience all the time. So I actually kind of enjoyed that. Also, just the fact of, like, I'm looking to upgrade my weapon, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't really feel like killing that boss. At least I have options. I have other things I can do And I feel like the dungeons are a pretty solid way to do it. They're fast, they're easy. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll just do that. That's fine. And so it gives me a couple different ways I can go, but also the fact that it's on a different day doesn't bother me. I can see how that could be annoying and stuff. And you're like, oh, I have to wait. But I really don't feel like that. The experience to me feels a lot more like, oh, okay, now I have something to do tomorrow. Like, okay, that's going to be my objective tomorrow. I just want to make sure I get that done, but like that'll be my main objective, like whatever. I have more than enough stuff to do today anyways. It's fine. So in the meantime, I'll just go and I'll go do some main quest, or I'll go get some different material I need for some other weapon that I need for a different character, because I have all these different things I'm trying to upgrade. It's like, whatever. I have this big list of things I'm trying to get, you know? So it's fine. And then as I'm working my way towards that objective, another random world quest appears, or I see a Geoculus or an Animoculus, or I see some chests, or I see an enemy encampment that looks kind of suspicious, or I see some rocks on a hillside. I'm like, oh, there's probably some goodies behind that, or whatever. There's just stuff. I end up like going on all these little bunny trails as I'm working my way towards objectives, as I'm exploring the world. And that's what this game is all about. It very much satisfies that itch that Skyrim does, or Breath of the Wild. So it's that kind of thing. Anyways, all that being said, that's a big long explanation, but being able to click on materials when I'm looking at upgrades, that are being able to click on the materials and then telling me where to find it rather than having to look it up on a wiki, like, it's just so obvious. I don't even know. It's like such a small quality of life thing. It just seems ridiculously simple, and I'm just like, why have I not seen this in other games so far, you know? But I just really like it. It's such a small little feature, but it just makes me really happy. Now, going back to what I was talking about with those dungeons, like, because they have different loot on different days, like, I realize the entire purpose of that is just to give me a reason to come back. It's the hook, line, and sinker. That's how they suck you in and eventually get you to want to spend some money. And I realize that's what's happening, but I don't really mind. Like, I think it's fine. Like, here's the thing, though, too. They're providing a service, and I like it. So, I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm having a good time. And I haven't spent any money at all. If you just keep, like, playing the game just in general, you will eventually get all the resources to buy all the things that you could do with money anyways. What money accomplishes for you is you get some more epic loot, a chance for that to happen, but it's super rare. Basically, what you're getting is you're just accelerating the process of you leveling, basically. The other thing that you're getting, though, that isn't really super obvious at first glance is that if you roll the same characters again, if you happen to roll a character that you already have, what happens is it gives you basically passive talent points, to use other game terminology. They call it constellations in this game. So if you roll a character that you already have, you get constellations. So 4-star heroes are pretty common, but 5-star heroes are super, super rare. So if you get a 5-star, that's cool and everything, but just know that you have to roll the 5-star hero multiple times to get to unlock the passive abilities that actually make that hero awesome. So that's part of how they really like suck you in and make you like, oh man, if I just roll it one more time, I can get that constellation. So that's kind of how that works. So along those same lines, to explain, so I am currently using Fischl, that like electric archer chick. Now, that wasn't necessarily my first choice. It wasn't necessarily what I wanted to use per se. Now that I've been using it for a while, I'm actually really enjoying it. But the point being, the reason that I started using her is because I rolled her 3 times in a row. So I got her the first time, I just acquired her, and then the other 2 times I got unlocked 2 of her constellations. Now, her first constellation, what it does is it's a passive bonus that makes it so that I have this little orb that's following me around that shoots every time that I do, and so it does 22% of my attack stat, I think is what it is, off the top of my head, and it does that every time that I fire. So what I want to do is just use my light attack. So don't use my charged arrows. Instead, I want to just use my fast ones as much as possible, because I can make that orb proc over and over again. So the end result is that I'm doing 122% total damage all the time. So her physical damage is just higher than all the other characters that I have. So if I'm going to be having a character I'm going to dump all my physical damage items onto, then she's the best choice for me currently, because I just happen to roll her multiple times, and thus I've unlocked her constellations, aka her passive bonuses. Now, I explain all that just to explain the nuances of how the game works and how you can like really fully take advantage of stuff, but also to explain what the incentive is for the gacha, like why would you spend money? This game is cross-platform, meaning that you can play with people on other consoles. So somebody on mobile can play with somebody on PC and PS4, and it all works together well. The matchmaking is really fast. I haven't experienced very much lag. Everything works pretty good. I also have found that people are pretty friendly overall, and so it's been just a really pleasant experience. Now, for the most part, there's only a few different game modes that you can actually do co-op with, and in particular, it's like bosses and dungeons is kind of the big things that they kind of highlight. You can venture out in the overworld, but it's just a little bit more limited in what you can do. But anyways, if you hop into a game, I would encourage like somebody to be a healer. It makes a big difference, and everybody loves you when you do that. But anyways, just know that co-op is an option. You are not required to do that, of course. It is totally optional. You can totally do everything solo. But just keep it in mind, especially if there's a particular point where you're struggling, you can hop in a co-op match real quick and get those materials that you're looking for, and everything everything's great. Oh, by the way, speaking of the stamina gauge, one of my favorite features in this game is actually just the dash, which is really simple. You use it all the time, but it just works really, really well. So I'm not even sure how to explain. So you have, when you first press the dash button, you have this quick burst of speed, and then you kind of slow down to a regular sprinting speed. So it uses just a little bit more stamina initially when you first press the button, but it just feels really, really good. I'm not even sure how to put it into words. It just flows, and you can move around and stuff like that. And I think I don't really end up accidentally climbing stuff accidentally when I'm using the sprint button either. So it just, I don't end up causing problems when I'm trying to do that, is one of the things I mean by that. But it also just like, I don't know, like most games that have a quick burst of speed like that, it's almost like you hop in that direction, or you blink, or you like zip forward in a straight line, and then you start running afterwards, but it just feels really clunky and kind of awkward and stuff. This game just, it feels really, really smooth. Like they polished that mechanic down until it just feels really good. I'm not even sure how to put it into words, but I feel like this game has some of my favorite dashing mechanic that I've used in any video game ever, and which is high praise coming from me. So I have something to whine about, and I'm not even sure how to put it into words. I feel like it's because they're trying to design it for mobile, and I think mobile users just tend to get excited when you tap on things and stuff happens. I think the reason, I don't know. I think it's a psychological thing. So anyways, they designed this game for mobile, and I think that's part of the reason why they do this. Is chests just spew out a bunch of garbage, and you have to actually manually pick it up by just tapping on the screen, is I think how it works. So what they do, though, and the same thing's true for a lot of other aspects of this game, there's lots of things where you have to just like button mash like crazy on stuff, and I think they're trying to do that because they think it makes it exciting. I think they're just trying to give me carpal tunnel, but seriously, so like one of the things in particular that's just a super big annoyance, they'll probably patch this out, we'll see what happens, but I'm going to whine about it for right now because it still exists for now, and I feel vindicated, so I'm mad, is that when you upgrade, how you upgrade your characters gain levels, but you don't really get XP out in the wild. You do, but it's basically non-existent. It basically doesn't exist. Don't even think about that. So you get XP really by loot. So you get these XP cards, these little adventure notes, whatever, that you get out of chests, or you get them off bosses, or you get them as rewards for dailies, or whatever. You end up with all these stupid notes, and then you end up with hundreds of them, but it takes hundreds of them to upgrade your character, and you have to click them one at a time. Why? Why is this necessary, game? What were they thinking? Like, why don't I have a times 10 button? Why don't I have a scroll bar? I can just use a whole bunch of them at once. This is insane. Why would you make me do this? So I just went ahead and made a macro on my mouse. So I just press it once and it clicks like 22 times, once every 100 milliseconds. There you go. Now we're talking. Now we're in business. Like, I know I'm a cheater, but you can't blame me. You would do the same thing. This is a classic RPG, right? Like, whatever happened to the good old-fashioned boots and gloves and chess piece that I'm used to seeing? Instead, we have this. Whatever this is, I'm not sure how these even fit on my character, honestly. What, just clothing just isn't good enough for you anymore? From now on in our fantasy stories, no tailors allowed. I'm not sure if I'm actually a nudist or if I'm just really fashionable. But anyway, what I'm really trying to communicate is the fact that the artifact interface is terrible. Now, the primary culprit behind this is just simply the fact that it's designed for mobile. It's all you phonies' fault. Now, the reason for this is because we only have small screens to work with, and as a result, there can only be a very limited amount of information that can be displayed at any given time. So as a result, we have a bunch of menus and sub-menus to navigate through in order to reach anything that we're trying to do. Now, typically in this game, it's good to focus on one or two characters that you upgrade a whole bunch, and then everybody else you can keep a little bit lower, and it's kind of okay at first, until eventually you get high enough where you get enough materials that you can do so. But anyways, focusing on just a couple characters is generally the way to go, and the price of everything goes up exponentially. But you're still better off focusing on a few characters rather than spreading yourself too thin. It just is better. Also, you'll very quickly run out of all your low-tier garbage to sacrifice anyways, and even though the game is pushing you really hard to commit clock cannibalism and mass compassicide, I don't really want to get rid of all my stuff yet because I only have 3-star stuff remaining, and a lot of the items that I'm trying to keep are also 3-star, but because the menus all look the same and they don't display any information, all I can do is just check and uncheck them. It makes me a little nervous, so instead I have to go back through the other sub-menus and inspect all of my compasses first before I decide that I'm really willing to commit to destroying all of the ones that are remaining. It's just kind of sad because like part of the whole draw of RPGs is the fact that you're collecting awesome loot. That's what it's all about, and yet the loot system in this game is just really awkward and stuff like that. Again, though, this kind of boils back down to what I was saying before, where if you really want the good loot, you spend real-world money and you get a bunch of wishes, so you get a bunch of 4-star and 5-stars, which is, I'm sure, what the developers are really trying to push for you to do anyways, and then those are the things that you're upgrading, but I digress. RPG, kind of sad because the item system is my least favorite part of this entire thing. Now, as much as I complain about the artifact system, there is one aspect of it that I really like, and that is the fact that if you're pouring all your resources into one particular item set or whatever that has like really high attack and crit or whatever, which scales with most of the other characters anyway, what that means is you can just take those items off and put them on somebody else, and poof, they're just as strong as your main character, as long as you have a high enough level weapon anyways. But the point being that like it just is a really easy way to move that power back and forth, so you can try out someone else as your main temporarily for a dungeon or whatever. If there's something you're really struggling with, you can just swap out for a totally different character to vary up your playstyle, or try a different team composition, or use different elemental reactions or whatever. It's just really cool. So you can change your main to be Lisa or Chongyun or Razor or Fischl or some other arch. Well, no, I guess actually that's all you can do. So I guess to summarize, my complaints really just all boil down to I hate mobile. Oh no. So you just need to bring your mobile games up to my PC standards. Alright, time to wrap this review up. So going back to the question I asked at the beginning, do I think this is a Zelda clone? The answer is no, I do not. There's enough stuff that's different for sure that it's definitely not a specific clone. Also, just as a side comment, you know, the Zelda series in general has always been really innovative, and they're constantly introducing new gameplay mechanics, which is then emulated by other game companies. This has always happened. Every single Zelda game does this. So it's not really a surprise that Breath of the Wild had a huge impact on games like this. So the fact that Breath of the Wild has a huge influence on the market of open-world adventure games not only doesn't surprise me, but I'm glad for that because Breath of the Wild did it so well. You know what I mean? And this game, like, it didn't, I feel like it did a good enough job. It's not quite as smooth as Breath of the Wild, like the sailing and stuff is a little bit jankier, but, you know, the fact that it is pretty darn good, I'm happy with it. It works well, and it gets the job done, and it allows me to explore the world in a way that I like. But yeah, overall, I'm very happy with this game. I really like the combat. I think it's super interesting, and I went into it super in-depth earlier, so I'm not going to reiterate that anymore. Voice acting is amazing. The script is pretty good. It could be a little bit better, but overall, like, really solid and everything, and I'm enjoying it a lot. Co-op is a little bit spastic, especially just the sheer amount of elemental reactions. It's kind of like just lots of stuff happening on screen. There's, like, hard to have any kind of strategy. It just feels like a total button masher, so I feel like that could be a little bit better or something. Just a little bit slower paced might be kind of nice. I don't know what could be done to make it any better, but I wish that I could do more exploring co-op, like have a friend that would just play through the entire game and explore the overworld. Would be really, really cool. Currently, the game doesn't really offer a super good way to do that. You can't do World Quest together. Speaking of World Quest and dailies, they're all right. I'm enjoying them so far. I can see how that could get really, really tedious. Also, one quick side note too, you can send out characters on missions to get other resources. This is especially nice for getting gold, or Mora as they call it in this game. Otherwise, getting particular resources that you don't want to farm yourself. This would be another alternative for doing that, which is kind of nice, and it just requires time. But yeah, I don't think this game is perfect or anything. It definitely has things that could be improved on, and I'd say overall it's pretty darn good, and it's worth a shot. It really surprised me a lot, but that isn't really saying much considering I went into it with very low expectations. So that bar wasn't exactly hard for it to surpass. So if you're looking for a main dish of Skyrim / Breath of the Wild with some excellent combat, a whole bunch of worthless junk for you to collect, and a side order of awesome voiceovers, plus some carpal tunnel thrown in for good measure, then this game is for you. But yeah, I've been having a great time, and let's just say for, the amount of money I've spent on this, which is none, I've been quite pleased, so there's that. But just remember, this game is free until it isn't. So, what happens when you have a professional guide writer who decides to make a review for a game? He basically just makes a guide. That's all he knows how to do. So, this is just a guide like I normally make, I guess. It's the exact same as the rest of my content, apparently. I wasn't trying to do that, but it just kind of ended up happening. But that all being said, I guess another way of looking at it is that if you enjoyed this video, then you'll probably enjoy all the other videos I have on my channel, too. I'm primarily a Legend of Zelda player, but I do a bunch of other games that are similar and satisfy that same kind of itch. So if you're interested in Genshin Impact, you'll probably be interested in the other content that I have here on my channel, and also what I stream over on Twitch as well. So you can check me out on both of those locations. Now, a quick question for you before you leave. So I spent a lot of time like describing the combat, and I went really in depth to it. Basically, I made a guide for it, just a real short one. But I could expand on that. As I was saying, I could totally rant for 20 minutes or longer about the various elemental reactions and go a little bit more in depth to all those things and explain like different combos and stuff you could do. Is that the kind of thing that you'd be interested in as a Genshin Impact enthusiast or whatever? And if so, yeah, I'm just curious. Just if you leave comments about what kinds of guides you would be interested in, then I might consider it. I'm not sure like what the demand is for stuff like that right now, and I don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about it if it's not something that people actually want. I guess I'll move on to other projects if there's not a demand for it, But yeah, I'm enjoying this game right now, and I'm having a lot of fun, and I am streaming it for the next little while, so I'll probably play it for a couple more weeks is kind of what I'm anticipating, at least. I do feel like I'm getting into it, it's slowing down a little bit. It is getting a little bit grindy, but not really so much that. It's more like trying to decide where to go, I guess, is more what it is. But I'm still enjoying it. I'm having a lot of fun. And there's just tons of stuff to do, so I'm having a great time. Also, would you guys like to see more reviews like this for other games in the future? Because I could totally do that. I kind of ended up making this a little bit more guidey, and I also tried to throw in as many jokes as I could. By the way, pro tip, if you want to make a video funny, all you have to do is throw in pictures. Doesn't even matter what the picture is. Pictures are hilarious. But yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this and found it helpful, be sure to throw a like on this video, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content just like this here on YouTube and Twitch. As always, you guys are awesome. You have an amazing day. And I'll see you next time.